go to our next session here with Kelly Brown from Prediction Health, and we're going to talk about how to use AI to improve your revenue per visit. Most of us are probably leaving revenue on the table. Kelly has been on the podcast already, has been to the events, has talked about really a lot of private practices, what we're doing. Leaving that money on the table. We have some leaks to fix. And love what you're doing with Prediction Health. I know we met a few years ago and have just been amazed at the progress that the AI and the software has made over time. So welcome here, Kelly. And I would love for you to give an introduction with your history as a practice owner and also a partner and physical therapist as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Chad. Appreciate you having me on. This is such a delight to be here with everyone. So I'm Kelly Brown. I'm the Director of Client Success with Prediction Health. I am a physical therapist. I have been in private practice for over a decade prior to joining Prediction Health. I did the pretty standard staff PT to clinic director to regional director to a shareholder in a large organization in the Pacific Northwest. So worked in the Seattle area and Washington State for many, many years. I'm a pelvic floor therapist. I also did a little vertigo. I'm no CS, so kind of all the gambit of different types of therapy. I met the CEO of Prediction Health in 2019 as a client, actually. And so Prediction Health had been doing some scribing services, building scribing for physicians, actually, at that time. Our co-founders are MD PhDs out of Vanderbilt. And they basically went to med school and got their PhDs in bioinformatics so that they could make healthcare easier for clinicians and better for patients using AI. So that's been their mission. It has been since day one. I met them when they were trying to branch out into physical therapy. So which as they started using it, I actually was lucky enough to use their scribing service for many years, actually back in the day with our first version of our scribing service. And we kind of started talking about all the other things that are challenging within physical therapy. So I was lucky that they wanted to listen to my opinion. And so I was able to tell them, compliance is a real issue. CPT coding analysis, like Sterling is saying, like we can look at our units per visit, but what's the actual quality of what the therapists are writing and how do we identify that? Chart audits are a huge thing that we have to do internally. So they ended up building some AI models around this. And then I joined the team about 2.5 years ago to bring this to therapists. So I've spent, my life doing documentation training on coding, doing those types of things, in a clinic while treating patients. So I've lived the life of the busy clinician, busy practice owner. And then now I get to coach our clients on actually using our data to become more efficient. And like we're talking about here, kind of squeezing every single percentage improvement, every single thing we can out of our visits, out of our patient encounters.
Love it. Thank you for filling in the gaps there for us. Kelly, you mentioned the term scribing, and I know you're doing a lot with AI scribing right now. Can you just bring everybody up to speed exactly what that is, and then talk about how clients are using that feature with Prediction Health to take their practice in a better direction, safer direction?
For sure. So this is obviously a really, really hot topic in PT right now. Just in the last year, this has been blowing up everywhere. We're seeing all sorts of our clients that are doing, different testing and stuff with different services and things. But essentially what we've created is a way for us to record our visit, and where we have a Chrome extension essentially is what you download on your computer. You push record and then you can talk to your patient, and it's an ambient listening service. And so it listens to your conversation with your patient. It takes all of that information and it uses our physical therapy based AI models. And that's one thing I like to point out is that a lot of the scribing services use like the ChatGPT large language models that come with like OpenAI and things like that, where we've actually built our own that are outpatient physical therapy and occupational therapy actually built around that specific rehab focused type of model. So it's something that I like to emphasize, because we also have a compliance model and our CPT coding model. So all of that applies to the output of the scribing tool that we're using. So basically you're in a visit with your patient. We have the ambient listening mode where you can just hit record and you can have your normal conversation with your patient. Some of our clinicians that are using this tool are really skilled at doing the objective information as well. Like it's really natural to just record the subjective, and then when you go to the objective, some clinicians really like it, some don't. But some clinicians are, like they're like tell their patients, I'm going to vocalize all my objective measures with you today, and patients really like that. It's a good rapport building technique. So then what we do is we have an output of that. So we have basically from that audio, we build as much of the note as we can based off our models, based off our compliance, and based off the content of what we know about that patient. We know the age, we know the diagnosis, what we can read on the page. So the output then is a compliant note that we're actually seeing that's in the actually interface of your EMR. And so then we have another, like that's the ambient listening. Then we also have our scribing. So for those therapists that are used to the dictaphone, and they have done the old school scribing, we have a scribing one where that's just straightforward scribing, less of the ambient listening. So we accommodate both types of workflows for therapists. But it's been helping significantly for obviously time to document. It's giving people like their joy back in their life being a therapist. Obviously, we all know that documentation burden is the reason people don't like physical therapy or why they leave it. Very few people don't like patient care. They get into it to be around patients. And so this actually gives people back their joy in their job, which has been obviously as a PT, it's really, really important.
So a couple follow-up questions here. I see in the chat, Courtney asked, does it include SLP, massage, or mental health notes?
So it does include some SLP. And that's actually one thing that we're tweaking and like getting a little bit more of. So it does include massage or mental health today, but we do have OT, PT, and then some speech. We do have some speech therapists utilizing it. But essentially, as we have more utilizing it, we actually can train our models to write more specific SLP type notes.
Cool. Does the note populate into the existing EMR, or is it a separate platform?
So it is it's a Chrome extension, which means it's actually in the actual EMR. Today we have with WebPT, SOAP 1 and SOAP 2, with Prompt, with Clinician, we have a version that actually populates into the EMR. With some of the other EMRs, we're building kind of an agnostic version that's still the Chrome extension. It populates into the Chrome extension, which is like sits inside of your screen of your EMR, and all you have to do is copy and paste it in. So we're essentially trying to accommodate all the different types of workflows. And so this is definitely something that has been, we've built a way to make it pretty straightforward and easy, so which is nice.
Great. So can you talk a bit about how that helps practices improve their rev per visit? And I know the thing that stood out to me when we first met and we sat down and you were sharing the software and exactly what it did was the compliance for per.
Mm-hmm.
So can you relate that and connect the dots for the rev per visit?
Yeah, for sure. So there's kind of two components to our revenue per visit, that type of metric. The first most obvious one is actually something outside of what I've already mentioned. And this is where we actually have a CPT code model that actually it reads the interventions, it reads what you are writing for your interventions, and it predicts if you've used the appropriate code for that. So that's where we have an immediate direct impact on your code selection for your therapists. And that's where in our analytics platform, which we have as a separate feature, we can give retrospective analysis on, this therapist is coding therapeutic exercise, 60% of the time. And here's the opportunity that we have within those 60% of those CPT codes to where you could code something different. So this is where, we know therapists are billing, sit to stands and squats and all these kind of functional things as therapeutic exercise. What our AI scribing tool does is it actually reads that as they're writing it, and it gives the suggestion in real time. Our philosophy is that we want to make it the easiest for the therapist to make the right decision at the time of documentation. And so that way they can see like, hey, I'm doing a therapeutic exercise and I'm doing squats and, deadlifts and lunges, and I'm doing all these things. And our model is saying like, hey, you have the justification here to actually code this as therapeutic activity. So it's able to help them understand that shift. Now, additionally, on the flip side of that, Chad, you can imagine that if you're overcoding, right, I'll use that term kind of loosely, overcoding in the sense that you're billing a therapeutic activity or a neuro and you don't have the justification, a lot of our clients are using our tool to help them find the right term for the justification, the right words. So what they'll do is they'll say like, okay, I'm doing bicep curls and I want to build this as therapeutic activity. And it's like, okay, well, if I do that, it says, nah, that's probably should be TheraX. But if I add for improvement in lifting groceries or for improvement in carrying child or something like that, then it will flip the model immediately to show like, yep, you now have a confidence of whatever percent that this is therapeutic activity. So that's one way that it is an immediate improvement on your actual like revenue per visit. So that's one way. Then the other way is that there, and we actually did some research. We did some research on the actual cost of like a clinician leaving your clinic. So I do like to point that out that, and we have a great blog post about this on our website, but essentially what we actually came up with, and this is, I would say is a conservative estimate, is that it's about a $65,000 per therapist that leaves your organization. And so when we think about that as a cost, then we can try to keep our therapist happy, our good therapist happy with this tool. That's another thing to consider as well. And then, of course, and sorry, I know this is a long-winded answer, but the third component is, of course, the compliance component, right? And so one of the things with compliance and with documentation quality that we have historically done is we do chart reviews, we see retrospectively what our therapists are doing poorly, and then we give them feedback, and then we hope in the next 6 months when we do our next review that they've improved. But we have really no way to kind of track that or see like how it's going. Now, our analytics platform helps with that retrospective analysis, and that's incredibly helpful and useful. But the Sidekick feature itself, which is the name of our scribing tool, is called Sidekick. It actually gives you compliant information right up front. And we've actually seen that across the board. So for our clinicians that are using our Sidekick, we're seeing improvements in their compliance without having to even do any sort of like instruction on what to put in the documentation, how to be the most compliant, all those things. It just automatically does that. And we're seeing that over and over again. And actually, we'll be presenting all of our findings at PPS. So for those of you that attend PPS, one of our co-founders, Robbie, and I will be presenting on that. So we're very excited about all that data.
Love it. You got some recognition here in the chat from Susan. Just want to read that for everybody. We use both Prediction Health and their Sidekick AI notes she is talking about. Kelly's talking about. Both are fabulous. We tried many AI listening programs, and Sidekick far outperforms in a noisy, busy clinic than the others. Thank you for that comment, Susan. You mentioned, I thought you were going there down the path of burnout. I know you and I talked about it. I don't think it was part of the podcast, but that it was something you mentioned. Can you share anything in terms of what you're seeing? I know it was something that was in development, if that's available, or is that something that's going to be launched in the future? But can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, so essentially so one of the things that as we've been developing our analytics platform over the last few years, that's been a really big kind of focus. We have our compliance focus, our CPT coding or our coding behavior, and then our burnout kind of measurement, right? We can track time to sign off, when they're signing off, when clinicians are signing off, all those types of things. And what we actually find with the Sidekick is we have drastic improvement in documentation time. So we're getting reports from all our clinicians utilizing this that we have a 50 to 75% reduction in time to document. And so obviously impactful. Now that is both for PTs and PTAs. And so that's something that I like to make sure that people understand that it does apply for PTAs too, because they're doing a high percentage of daily notes, and it can help with that as well. So we're seeing a significant improvement in that. And then we're just and this is kind of it's not something that we can like hard measure today. It's not a super objective, it's more of a subjective report we've been hearing from a lot of our therapists. But they talk about how they can actually see a patient as a patient. And so most of us, and I think most of you on the call can relate to this, is when you look at your schedule for the next day and you see you have 5 evals and then 8 daily visits. You see those 5 evals and that's all you see, because you're like, oh my God, I got 5 evals tomorrow. I'm going to be stuck in documentation. So what our scribing tool does is it changes the way our mind thinks about our patients coming to the door. So the next day, the documentation burden is reduced. So we now see those patients as an opportunity to actually like treat patients. Like, oh my gosh, I got these 5 new evals. I wonder what's going to go on. How is it going to like fix, and like how are can we help these patients? So we see that kind of as like a subjective kind of thing. So that's one of the things we're seeing. And just clinicians that are, they are burning out, and they're saying like, and we have people that do pilots with us and we hear feedback if I come in on Monday morning and this isn't here, I'm not coming back. Like we have to have this. So people really like it. We also have a lot of our clients that are using this as a recruiting tool. AI is something that is really huge, not just in our industry, but in the world. And so if we're not as therapists utilizing this to the best advantage, and new students coming in, new grads, people are knowing about this stuff. So it's important as a recruiting tool as well.
Love it. Michael Lynch asked this question: will it document small talk?
No, so it takes that out. So obviously, and this has been fun. We have a lot of clients that like to play with the models. They like to play with the tool and see, like, I mean, we had a gentleman this week. He's like, Kelly, I really put it through the ringer. I sat next to our speaker. I was in the gym. I had two patients next to me. I was dictating into it. People were talking behind me, and it did super, super well. So, so it did from an audio perspective, but also people who have like, you're in a subjective and your patient's talking for 20 minutes about their dog, right? And you just can't get him to stop. Like it will cut out all non-relevant information. And so that's something that can really, really help. And so help us like weed through all the things that our patients tell us, right? Like all the important information, it will weed through that in both modes too. So in the ambient listening and the smart dictation mode. So for those of us who like to use a dictation style thing, it doesn't have to be perfect. So and oftentimes when I demo this for clients, I'll do kind of the like, oh gosh, what am I going to say? Or like, I'll pretend somebody walks into the office and like, we'll talk about your weekend. And then you go back to dictating, like all of that will be cut out. It will only be information that's relevant to the patient.
Love it. I think you talked about this already, but Candace asked, the pediatrics. Does it work with pediatrics?
So our analytics platform, does not work for pediatrics from a compliance standpoint. However, we do have pediatric therapists that use it for scribing. We have found that some of our pediatric OTs specifically, where their coding of neuro, like their phrasing might be a little different than a typical like pediatric PT. We have found a gap in our CPT coding model specifically for that. And that's one thing I like to emphasize here is that we have two models that are running. We have our compliance and our AI scribing, and then we have our CPT Insights model. So a lot of our pediatric therapists that are using our Sidekick today, they'll use it for the scribing function. And we actually turn off the CPT stuff for them if it doesn't apply. And that's one thing that we can do is like if therapists are saying, hey, the information I'm getting from the CPT information doesn't really apply to my, I'm a pediatric OT. So then we just turn that off kind of thing. So
Great. And then Lynn, as a follow-up here, will it work for lymphedema therapist?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And that's where we have had some, like one of our very early testers, he treated TMJ. And so some of the goals and stuff that our model was creating were more focused on like cervical and shoulder. And so he gave us the feedback of, hey, I'd really like to see more specific TMJ. So we just tweaked the model slightly so that it can actually generate for TMJ. Same thing for lymphedema. So if we had a therapist that was straight lymphedema, they're using it for this. And then basically if they saw anything in the output that was like, hey, can we tweak this a little bit? We can do that. One of the things that strengthens our model is our analytics platform because we've analyzed millions of notes. And so we have lots of lymphedema on our analytics platform. So we have the ability to actually analyze that data and use it. So we can do it. There's always those nuance of different, LSVT, like the different kind of things that we do as therapists. So
Great. There are two very good questions in here on utilization. I want to ask those before we wrap up. For everybody who wants to learn more about Prediction Health, what is the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so first, I always recommend people follow us on LinkedIn. So we've got a lot of really great content, especially coming into all of our conference season. So please follow us on LinkedIn. You can also follow me on LinkedIn. It's really great. You can reach out to me individually at kelly.brown@predictionhealth.com, or you can reach out to info@predictionhealth.com if you have any interest in, setting up a demo or anything like that. So we have a really, really great sales team, and they can help answer any sort of questions about pricing and the different nuances with each of the EMRs and things like that. So
great. So there is a poll up on your screen. If you just respond yes to that, we'll get that information to Prediction Health and Kelly's team. Let me find that question. That was really good. Oh, somebody answered it too in the chat, but for everybody that's watching, Jody asked, do clinicians carry their laptop around for the whole visit in order to capture the whole session? Yeah, can you talk about utilization a little bit, what that looks like?
Yeah, so it kind of depends on therapists' typical workflow, but yes, today typically we have a lot of our clinicians have like a roller where they carry their laptop with them. They start with the audio, and then sometimes like if it's a daily visit and they're doing exercises in the gym, they might leave their computer somewhere, go do some of their exercises, instruct their patient, do those types of things, come back to their computer, dictate a few more things, stop the audio, go back. That's one workflow we've seen. We've seen some people that, they just have their computer with the subjective, they record the subjective, get that going. They put their computer either like leave it on the counter or put it in their office, and then they come back afterward, and then they just finish the audio that way. So it really can accommodate any sort of workflow that you have. I do see the question about the phone. That's one thing we don't quite have yet, is the phone. We are working on iPads, so building this out not just as a Chrome extension, but as an oh gosh, forgive me, as a
iOS.
app, like an
iOS. Yeah.
Apple one. So yeah, so iOS. So working on that as well, but we're starting with the iPad instead of the iPhone just to start with. But eventually, I mean, we're looking for feedback from our clients on what's the most desirable workflow, and we'll accommodate for it. So for those of you that are on the call that are our clients, they know we work fast, we make quick adjustments. We really want to make sure that this is useful for our clinicians.
Love it. Danielle has one more great utilization question here. How does it work? Can you have multiple patients up at once? How does that? So if I'm working with a patient over here, doing a supervised modality while there's something else going on over here where I'm doing one-on-one manual, like what does that look like?
So you can do that. You can have multiple tabs open too within your EMR. So you have multiple, like let's say you don't finish one note, you go to the next one, you have, let's say, 5 notes open. The only thing that we tell and we coach our clinicians on doing is making sure that you're just doing one recording at a time. So if I'm seeing you, Chad, and we're talking, I'm going to hit record. I'm going to stop that recording, let that process, which takes about 10 seconds. And then I'll go to the next recording, push record, and talk to that patient. So it will take the audio that is in that session and apply it to the patient that it's under. And you just have to hit start and stop in between. But it's capable of doing that. And it does it really well too.
Love it. You mentioned already the best places to get in contact with you with LinkedIn. You shared your email address. The open platform, anything that you're working on right now that's coming in the future that you want to talk about where this is going. I know for me, like just looking at the compliance score, that was huge. You talked a lot about just saving time on dictation. That's wonderful. Love what you said about, using it as a recruiting tool, as well. Very smart. We're using state-of-the-art technology to reduce your load as a therapist. Love that as well. Anything else that you're working on that you want to talk about and share, Kelly?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Choosing something to share in like 10 minutes or even 2 minutes is so challenging. I'll give kind of a large overview, just generally where we're always trying to go. So we are simultaneously trying to are working on enhancing our analytics platform. So that's one thing we're working on. We're always working on that, enhancing what we're measuring for compliance, all those different things. Then we will be we're working on Sidekick, making sure we can provide Sidekick to different EMRs. There's a lot of different EMRs out there, making sure we can help more and more therapists. And then eventually what we'd really like to do, Chad, and this is what, as a clinician, I get super excited about, is use our AI to actually help with clinical decision making and best treatment pathways based on our patients. And so that's where you can imagine if we pull in information from clinical practice guidelines, we can actually say like, here's all the things for this types of patient, and then just giving kind of like guidelines. Again, our goal is never to tell a therapist how to treat. And you'll hear our team talk about it that way. We never want to tell a therapist how to treat. We want to just make things easier to do the right way. And so that's where we want to just make sure therapists don't have to rack their brains constantly to try to see the right tool. And see the right way to go. So that's something that we have coming up. Likely won't be till 2025, but that's something that we are certainly doing the background work on now, so that we have a really, really robust AI tool that we can utilize for our clinicians.
Great. So lots of questions here on EMR does it work with my EMR, or in my, my practice is different. I do something special, whether it's peds, lymphedema, neuro. I saw quite a few of those in there. My guess is the best path for the unique situations is that they reach out directly to you and the Prediction Health team, and that
Yeah.
you're learning very fast, right? You have a team of engineers, you're building stuff out, you're always looking for new clinicians to serve as well. And one more time, if you can give everybody the best way to reach you, Kelly, that
Yeah.
would.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can reach out directly to me at kelly.brown@predictionhealth.com. Or you can reach out to, and I think I said info, but let's do sales. So sales, SALES @predictionhealth.com. That can get you directly to a sales member, and they can go over all the nuances of which EMR, all the different things. Generally kind of answering those questions, what I will say is, like I mentioned, we have analyzed millions and millions of notes. We have practices in all 50 states, and we have all sorts of different types of practices now. So all of those notes help to strengthen our AI models. So the likelihood of us being able to serve each of the individual types of practices on this call is pretty high. Just because we can do that, and we can tweak things slightly here and there if we do come up against something that is like, oh, we haven't done that, or things like that. So just kind of a general answer to that.
Love it. How about some love for Kelly in the chat? That would be great. Your favorite emoji. Great. Thanks for everything you do, Kelly. This was awesome. Appreciate you
No, I
being here.
appreciate it, Chad. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.